Okay.
So,
Okay.
okay.
Good.
Thank you, Anna. Once again, I am George Elliott Clarke. It is such a great pleasure to be able to present this evening's fare of entertainment and elucidation. I want to thank my co-host, Young Wang, and the East and West Learning Connections organization for getting behind this event so solidly and making it possible. And I will say a few words about each of the poets and singers and the composers in a moment. But before we go any further, I need to recognize, as all of us must, where we are on Turtle Island. I'm coming to you here from Toronto, along with Young Wang and many of our presenters, or all of our presenters as well. And we need to know that what we now call Toronto, Ontario, is the traditional territory of many nations, many First Nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, uh, and the Wendat peoples, and is now, of course, home to many diverse nations, Inuit and Métis peoples from all over Turtle Island and the Caribbean, I'll add quickly. And I also need to acknowledge, we need to acknowledge the East and West Learning Connections acknowledges, Young Wang and I acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 of the Mississaugas of the Credit. And I think we can add that we call upon all governments to be respectful and responsible of treaty rights. Um, I also want to send a quick shout out to the designer of our poster, which many of you have received. And I believe she is watching us from Beijing, China right now. And her name is Shirley.
Shanghai, Shirley, yes.
Oh, Shanghai, sorry. Yeah, thank you, Young Wang. It's saying Shanghai, not Beijing. Beijing gets so much attention, but really Shirley Chen is in Shanghai. So she's watching us from Shanghai. Thank you so much, Young Wang, for that correction.
Sure.
Very important. And I'm really happy that we have Shanghai in the house. And perhaps we'll also have Beijing in the house. But I'm really happy that we have Shanghai in the house this evening. I'll also add a few more comments about this evening, and then I want to ask Yang Wang to add some comments as well. I'll just say quickly, quoting St. Augustine, that music is ordered sound. That's what he wrote in his Confessions. Music is ordered sound. And poetry is, of course, ordered words, words placed in a specific special order. And so it is our great pleasure this evening to bring together ordered sound, the ordered sound of music and voice, and the ordered words of poetry. We have presentations involving 5 poets. Only 4 of the 5 can be present with us this evening. Unfortunately, Andrea Thompson is unable to be with us this evening, but we are thinking about her and wishing her very well as she recovers from a particular health concern at the moment, and send her a whole lot of hugs and love. And we know we can say that you will love her poetry as it is recited by Aisha Chatterjee. And of course, the song that has been composed out of her poetry as well by James Rolfe. I don't want to keep on talking now that we're at 7:10. I should let Young Wang, my wonderful co-host, president of the East and West Learning Connections, take over and introduce herself and our program tonight to a certain extent as well.
Well, thank you so much, George.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to East and West Learning Connections, a Zoom platform. We are a nonprofit organization that bring volunteering and learning and communicating opportunities to the public. We hope, by doing this, we can promote people of different heritages to get to know each other and break cultural barriers. And thank you so much, George, for your wonderful disclaimer and introduction. But for some reason, George forgot to mention one person who deserved the most applause for this wonderful event, put everything together. And he is a National Poet Laureate, a professor of English at University of Toronto, many award winner, and George Elliott Clarke. George, before I turn it over to you, can I ask you a question? Like, I'm so honored to be able to co-host this event with you, but I never asked you. So how come? Like, how to have 5 poets breaking into song?
Yang Wang, first of all, thank you so much for the commendation. But I'll answer your question very succinctly so we can get on with our event tonight. But I am thrilled to be able to co-host with you this event. But where does it begin? Well, it begins many decades ago, and it also begins at Christmas. So the double answer is many decades ago, maybe I shouldn't say many, a couple of decades ago, Mr. James Rolfe and I had the great occasion and privilege to do an opera together that was very well received, titled Beatrice Chancy. And it aired on the CBC and got lots of acclaim and so on. In fact, that applause is still ringing in my ears. Every day it's still ringing in my ears. And so I want to thank James Rolfe once again for that beautiful landmark composition. And over the years, as you'll hear when we discuss his work further, he's gone on to more and more acclaim. He and his wife, Juliette Palmer. And then at Christmas time, I thought it would be a really great thing to give my companion, Giovanna Riccio, something special. And so I reached out to James and asked if he might consider composing music for one of her poems. And he very kindly and nicely said yes. And I sent him a group of her poems, and he settled on the one that I really liked, especially titled Namesake, which we will all get to hear tonight. Praise God, I'll say very quickly as well. And so we had the great opportunity to surprise Giovanna, who's part of tonight's proceedings as well, with her song. And I know that she was really taken aback and surprised. And I so much loved her reaction that I had to go running back to James. I had to go running back as fast as possible and say, Mr. James Rolfe, please, sir, would you mind doing some more songs? And happily he agreed. And then I thought, you know what? We got to share this idea with as many people as possible. So let's reach out and find some other poets who've had music composed for their work. And so David Yeager is part of tonight, having composed music for the poetry of Aisha Chatterjee, and Emily Hiemstra as well, who's composed music for Lisa Richter. And we also have the recorded music of Gua Yan, who has recorded music to accompany Anna Yin's poetry. And so with all of that happening, it was impossible to not say, let's do a special program on May 14th with the East and West Learning Connections, 5 wonderful women poets. It is accidental that you are all women, the poets who are speaking tonight. It's accidental, but also wonderful. After all, we just had Mother's Day, and happy Mother's Day again to everybody. No matter who you are, you have a mother. So happy Mother's Day once again. And also accidental is the fact that our 5 poets come from different backgrounds. But hey, this is Toronto. Hey, this is Canada. This is how we roll. You know, anybody who doesn't like it can go live in the US or go someplace else. Sorry, but that's how I personally feel about it. And that's not to put down America. After all, they've got a fairly good president right now. But I think that we have made great strides in Canada as a multicultural society. And I think that tonight is one example of that. So it's now 7:16. I've probably spoken enough, but let me turn our attention back to the co-host, Yang Wang.
Well, I don't have much to say, but I would like to remind our audience, please mute yourself and turn off your video. We're going to record this session so we can put online later. If you have any questions for our artists, please send your questions in the form, and George and I will pick it up from there. And at the end, maybe if we have time, I hope I can bring some little surprise to you. Okay, now over to you, George.
Yang Wang, this is wonderful. And so now we are ready to begin officially. Our first artiste that we will be hearing from this evening is Ms. Aisha Chatterjee. And I do have a few words to say about her before we turn the stage over to her. Born and raised in Kolkata, India, Aisha Chatterjee has lived in England and improved it by living there. The USA and improved it by living there. And Germany definitely improved it by living there, and is now based in Toronto, improving Toronto by being here. She holds a BA from Smith College in Massachusetts, graduating cum laude. It's always good to have some Latin, so cum laude in English and German. She is the author of 2 poetry collections, The Clarity of Distance and Bottles and Bones. Her work has appeared in journals all over the world, been translated into 3 languages, and set to music by Canadian composer David Yeager. And Aisha is also past president of the League of Canadian Poets and chair of the League's Feminist Caucus. Aisha will read for 10 minutes, and then she will be introducing 3 poems and the songs that have been created out of those 3 poems. And so I will say a few words right now about the composer. David Yeager, who is a member of the Order of Canada, is a Toronto-based composer, music producer, and broadcaster, a member of the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation's radio music department from 1973 to 2013. So that's 4 decades of improving the broadcast music out of CBC. In 1978, he created 2 New Hours, a contemporary music network broadcast series heard on CBC Radio 2 until 2007. He was also CBC coordinator of the CBC Radio Canada National Competition for Young Composers from 1974 to 2002. And in the early 1970s, David established a digital sound synthesis facility at the University of Toronto, one of the first in Canada, helping Toronto, of course, to be in the the front ranks of all universities in the whole world. I happen to teach there, so I'm happy to say that. He also co-founded in 1971 the Canadian Electronic Ensemble together with David Grimes, Larry Lake, and Jim Montgomery. And our singer for Aisha Chatterjee's poetry is none other than Karen Usha, a soprano who transcends her classical training and brings her versatility to a variety of genres and audiences. Born and raised in Sri Lanka, Karen's love for singing and stage performance began at a young age. She commenced her vocal education in her native land through the affiliated Royal and Trinity Schools of Music of London, England. After immigrating to Canada, she pursued her vocal development through the Royal Conservatory of Music and Voice Performance, the Faculty of Music, at one of the world's leading universities, the University of Toronto. Aisha has held solo performances in Australia and New York. As Toronto is now home, she works for the Toronto Public Library and conducts vocal lessons and music programs to children with autism, and enjoys her collaborative work with local musicians, poets, and authors. Karen Aisha also has a home catering service, a teenage son, and, drum roll, a gorgeous pup. Thank you, everyone. And now let's hear from Aisha Chatterjee.
Oh my gosh, George. I think you should just continue on the entire evening because it's just wonderful to listen to you. Thank you for that brilliant introduction. And I just want to say thank you for just being you. You are amazing. You have this incredible generosity of spirit. And of course, thank you for this evening, but thank you for everything that you do for poetry and for poets and for lifting the voices of poets around this country. I mean, look at what you're doing today. It's amazing, and we're very, very lucky and very fortunate to have you. And I'm just honored to be part of this lineup. So I just wanted to say that. I know I don't have a huge amount of time, so I'm just going to get right into it. I'd like to start with a poem that I wrote pre-pandemic, but then which was published last summer. And I was thinking really about how seasons and weather are perceived differently depending on which part of the world you live in. And I'd really like to dedicate this poem to everyone I know, all my friends and family in India. Seasons. That day when you said, summer's coming. Snow piled on either side of us, barrier against the rest of the world. Nowhere to go but forward or back. Ourselves deeply hidden by choice, by the deliberate dawning of excess. The things we don't know until it's too late almost. Is it? Summer is coming. Where I'm from, we close our curtains to the sun. So, you know, for me, poetry is music. I've thought about this a lot, and it's music, but we sort of have to work harder at getting the melody across because we don't have instruments to work with, and we don't have a singing voice to bring it across. And so what we do is, as poets, we use the sound of words, we use rhythm, we use image, we use breath and silence to create melody. At least that's what I try to do with my poems. When I was sort of thinking of which poems to read today before the songs, I sort of discovered that I actually refer to music and I talk about songs and about silence in quite a few of them. So I've picked out two to read for you today. The first one was written actually after a trip to the rainforests in Costa Rica. And I think there may be a couple of friends here in Washington, DC, who we actually met on that trip. And hopefully they'll kind of recognize a bit of La Rios in this poem. It's called On Silence. Imagine the night singing outside your window, like your blood amplified into an orchestra. Every leaf on every tree, each insect, even the ground, a harmony of timbres. the moon the lightest of them. Your thoughts made manifest. They don't need you. When you are gone, somewhere in a jungle you once passed through, this blood rush will still be humming, many-legged. There are certain themes that sort of find their way into many of my poems, and that includes belonging and language and identity and immigration and emigration and things like that. And I think this next poem touches on quite a few of those. I am my own country. The color of my summer is the cardinal's call, berry rich and dangerous. I make my barriers. The lilt of my tongue is mine. Yesterday, 5 robins sang for me, 3 on my high brick walls, 2 on my roof, clear against the sky, louder than the train that shook the earth. When they stopped, it was as if they had never been. That is how I am. So we're on to the musical section. And, through this past year and a half, which was this awfulness of COVID, I was really fortunate in having met 2 amazing people, David Yeager and Karen Usha, and really the one sparkling highlight of these last so many months has been being able to collaborate with them. We've sort of worked on a number of different songs based on my poems. And so for today, Karen picked out 3 short pieces that she wanted to showcase. All of them are from The Clarity of Distance, from the revised edition. And so the way we're going to do it, because there are 3 pieces, I will read the poem and then she will sing her rendition of David Yeager's beautiful melody. And then I'll read the next poem and so on. So, and I'd like to start with the very last piece in this new edition. It's called Noughts and Crosses, which is a game that I think you know in North America as tic-tac-toe. So, Noughts and Crosses. In this square lies the sum of all my past. In this, what could have been, but wasn't. I've got accompaniment for this, is brilliant. Here I choose infinity, and here I don't.
In this square lies the sum of all my past. In this, what could have been, but wasn't. Here I choose infinity, and here I don't.
Sadhana is a form of meditation in certain Hindu and Buddhist traditions, in which the practitioner invokes a deity and sort of internalizes them to the point at which they become them. And for this poem, I chose Usha, the Hindu goddess of dawn. Sadhana. Slit the night's starred skin. Slowly, slowly, the timing is everything, and peel it back. The flesh, exposed, will swell, sharp and fibrous, dripping light. The world will flatten and stones break like dry leaves. If a bird call whips the air, don't flinch. It's just a side effect of time. Spit the fluffy pinkness out beyond the bruise-webbed whalebone mouth where paths form, silver blue and faithless. The crunch of swallowed breath, martini dry, is purer then. And when you turn away, be sure to lick those chilled lips, your spine stained blue, the dawn creaking high in the trees.
Slit the night's starred skin. Slowly, slowly, the timing is everything, and peel it back. The flesh exposed will swell, sharp and fibrous, dripping light. The world will flatten and stones break like dry leaves. If a bird call whisper, don't flinch, it's just a side effect of time. Spit the fluffy pinkness out beyond the bruise-webbed whalebone mouth, where paths form, silver blue and faithless. The crunch of swallowed breath, martini dry, is purer than. And when you turn away, be sure to lick those chilled lips, your spine stained blue, the dawn creaking high in the trees.
So, and the last piece that we'd like to showcase for you is actually a piece that a poem that I wrote about Toronto. We moved here in 2010, and I had never, from Germany, and I had never lived so close to a body of water before. And there was Lake Ontario, and it's still magical to me. And so this one's for Toronto. It's called Positive. On a lake, a sky tears, ripped by boats and clouds and all the restless mutterings of a fettered earth. Easy to invert invention when the likeness is of another self skittering light across the sun. The moon tonight will borrow the flight of a blue jay's wing to hide behind. Meanwhile, the lake breaks into sunshine.
On a lake, the sky tears, ripped by boats and
Oh, that was just so beautiful, for crying out loud. You know, I want sunlight, I want daybreak to happen every hour. Thanks to hearing this beautiful rendition of your poetry, Aisha. Karen Usha's voice is just so thrilling and enlivening. Wow, I'm at a loss for words, but I am going to ask David Yeager to unmute briefly and maybe just give us a quick sentence or two about your approach to this song. And I'd also like to ask Karen for her response as well.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
You know, in her introduction, Aisha brilliantly summarized the process. I barely need to add to what she's already said. I mean, she spoke about the poet's art and what you have to work with. You know, you have rhythm, you have image, in fact, you have melody in language. And I'm a composer who is also a voracious reader of poetry. And I'll be perfectly honest, most of the poetry I read, I soon forget, because what I'm looking for is those poems that have the music there waiting to be discovered and just pops out. And all you need to do is to gather it up and frame it into a song. And so I found in the poetry of Aisha Chatterjee such rich musicality, such incredibly intense imagery that have just led me to, I think that by now, I think we've set over a dozen of your poems, Aisha, and with more to come. It's just been such a wonderful experience. And of course, having learned all of the colors and the nuances that Karen Usha has waiting for us to call upon in the creation of songs that will give her a vehicle, she has risen to this temptation, this tease magnificently. And we're just having a great time bringing these words into music. And of course, I'm the lucky person because, you know, I have these friends who are giving life to, you know, just an idea. And I think it's wonderful. Thank you.
And if I could just quickly add, this collaboration means so much to me. I could go on and on, but I think I've done my piece for this evening. And I just want to thank you, Aisha and David, for giving me this opportunity. These pieces have really touched me in a very personal way. And Aisha, you know that Noughts and Crosses is one of my favorites. It's also one of the shortest pieces that I've ever sung, but one that I will hold very dear in my heart. So I thank you for the opportunity, George and your team. I hope we can do this again.
I've got to say, it was fantastic. I truly appreciate all of the insights that you've brought us in terms of the setting and singing of the poetry, Aisha's creativity. And I should add quickly that Aisha has very kindly agreed to recite the poetry of Andrea Thompson, who's unable to be with us this evening, a little bit later on in our program. Yeah, I hope we can do this again. I'm absolutely thrilled to do that. And I want to ask my co-host, Yang Wang, if she would like to add anything before we continue on with our program tonight.
Oh, I just saw like L. Morris would like to see the song actually. He sent a message in the chat. He would like to see the song. Well, that's like amazing, that amazing song. He would like to see it. But I was really touched by that. Like, I'm my own country. So as an immigrant, I was deeply touched by that. Thank you.
I agree, and I also want to thank our poet ally and comrade and colleague and friend Al Moritz for that request to actually see, to visualize the notes and so on. And Giovanna is telling me, tell him no. No, maybe at some point, if it's possible, we can exchange emails afterwards, and those composers who are able to share the music with Al might very well be able to do so. But I appreciate that idea about the visuality of it, because we're celebrating the visuality of words and the visuality of score through the actual transmutation of all into music and vocals, and I can't sing. So having said that, I want to thank Aisha and Karen and David once again for kicking us off this evening. But now it's time to move to our second presenter, who is none other than Giovanna Riccio. And I have a bio to present for Giovanna. She is a graduate of the University of Toronto, one of the world's finest universities, I hasten to say once again, where she majored in philosophy. Her love of poetry is her inheritance from a gifted autodidact father who penned his own verses. She is the author of Vittorio from Lyrical Miracle Press, 2010, Strong Bread from Quattro Books, 2011, and Plastics Republic from Guernica Editions, 2019. Her poems have also appeared in national and international publications and in numerous anthologies. Her work has been translated into Italian, French, Spanish, and Romanian. Giovanna has participated in various international literary festivals, but especially enjoyed presenting at the University of Calabria's Italian Diaspora Conference, held about only an hour's drive from where she was born. And I will say I was privileged to be present at that moment of her presentation at the University of Calabria in Cosenza, Italia. And there's actually a wonderful photograph from that session taken by a member of the audience, which shows all of the men on the same panel looking at Giovanna, who was the only woman on that panel, reciting her poetry. So it makes a great statement about empowerment for women and the presence of women in the arts and the attention that they must command. I've already mentioned James Rolfe, who is the composer of the song that we will shortly hear, which is titled Namesake, which Giovanna will read completely, and he will be singing as well as the composer of the piece, and he will be accompanied on piano by his brilliant composer companion Juliette Palmer. I'm not going to say more about James and Juliet right now because they will be back a little bit later. So I will now invite Giovanna to recite for us.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. I'm so happy to be here. And I especially want to thank George for thinking up not only the Christmas present, but this evening. And to Yang as well for co-hosting and facilitating so much to make this evening happen. So I'll just say that I'm going to read from Strong Bread. It's a book I published in 2011. And because Namesake is from there, I just thought that I would choose the poems and put them all around that immigrant theme. And also, I wanted to commemorate my late mother because last week was Mother's Day, and I have in Strong Bread a number of poems centered around her. And so I just will begin. and then James will follow up with the musical part. So the first poem is called The Story. I'm very happy to be reading these poems again. I just want to say I hadn't read them for a long time. And when I went back to look, I was happy that I still like them. So I'm glad to share them with you this evening. Thank you, everybody, for showing up. 140, how wonderful, right on. So the story. With each passing day, I loosen a buried language. My tongue breaks into open vowels I have befriended because, like the ancient olive tree with the split trunk, I've been listening so long to the cobbled history of this faraway town, to stories folded into a map with its legend of worn symbols, sunny oleanders, bad-tempered donkeys, bitter wine, keeping the old country fixed. I want and don't want to hear versions belonging to those who stayed and now walk on paved over stones, who agree to follow this dated route out of respect for those who left but also stayed, those still visible behind the balcony door I point to, where my mother with glossy black hair pinned back remains half hidden, while below guitar players strum. And as long as my father serenades this town I know by heart, they continue to live in a place that has grown up without them. The second poem I'm going to read is specifically for my mother. It's called Learning How Not to Dream. It references my grandfather who went back and forth from the United States to Italy and came back with his money and bought up land. And he was a very good provider, but let us just say, a harsh father. Learning how not to dream. Late 1920s in that southern Italian town where, in a fine hand on paper as thin as her dreams, she writes a letter to America, tells a faraway father she's an A student, loves her books and pens. Low on ink, he responds in a blistered script, promising a pickaxe to scrawl with, unforgiving soil to scribble on. My mother tells me this story more than once. More than once, his paper's heft pulls us into a residue of charred thumbs below the surface of pristine hills, into the pulp mills where he worked double shifts, furiously shoveling cinders from furnaces, coughing up cold ash. So this next poem is called Mother of Pearl, also for my mother. My mother spent 2 decades working in a costume jewelry factory. And she worked specifically in the paint room where they turned plastic into iridescent pearl-like objects and all manner of beautiful things. And you can imagine the chemicals that she had to breathe in the days before they had all kinds of safety regulations in places of work. So this is called Mother of Pearl. It was too long ago. I'll just say, sorry, I just wanted to mention this. It does gesture to my strained relationship with my mother. I think characteristic of the generations in immigrant families. Mother of Pearl. It was too long ago that we came across the ocean. Billboards waiting for us and winters blowing in snow. I want to remember your booted figure weathering blizzards, want to put our frozen forms aside, follow your warmth when it goes past fatigue to the clothing store where your wages bought the white blouse for my choir outfit, your fingers shelling out songs extracted from noxious chemicals in sea caves on King Street. You, everyday maker of fake pearls, creator of pendant luminosities and iridescent tear-shaped fogs. How deftly you travel through polymer mists into fresh shapes, hues, lengths. With necklaces, sleep, weighing you down. How good to latch my nightmares, to feed my love for chocolate and oranges, to dress me one immaculate Sunday in lace and the forgiveness of sins. I'm telling you this so I won't forget the layers that formed each pearl, or undervalue those simulations I keep in old boxes held together by memory, strung on fault lines that can open and eclipse the light. And now I am going to finish with Namesake. So the version that James set to music is an edited, shortened version of this poem. And this poem is based on my personal experience. So back in the day, when Italian immigrant girls and boys were registered in public schools, they anglicized your name. And so I went very quickly from Giovanna to Joan. And so this also references the fact that when I turned 40, I decided I wanted my name back and reclaimed it. So I go as Giovanna, but I'll just say that I do have poems that I've published in the name Joan as well. Namesake. A small stranger was waving from a distant Italian port. Every night she walked through the crevices of my broken sleep and tugged on my spinal cord, pointing to that hard country that had sent me away. I can still see the oak floor, the teacher unrolling my R's, clipping my name to Joan. Joan, I don't know if that blunt one syllable turned my head, but everywhere English flattened Italian. And when my father snipped my impractical long hair, I looked away, pretended those orphaned ringlets belonged to someone else. Blonde, blue-eyed goddesses who never ate garlic filled the temples of the Golden Book Encyclopedia. The face of ancient Rome belonged to our teacher now, but blinded statues and pictures, old sun threaded in the cracks of fallen ruins, were calling me. When the column in my spine shifted, my bones stiffened to keep in that mute, abandoned stranger. That summer, she beckoned, carved messages into my aching shoulders and unyielding sacrum. She seized my hip joints and forced me toward her fluttering hand. My fingers clutched the boarding pass. I remember the airplane lifting me to a warm, unknowing sleep. Sudden morning opening onto old stone, July heat resting on palm trees, wind cupped in the umbrella pines, and everywhere taxis. I rode back into my dusty body, into Rome's dusky fall echoing in the stone. I wandered with tourists into the navel of the Colosseum. Mad emperors, gypsies, soothsayers wove into the crowd. I wove into an ancient stand of columns, not knowing anymore who to walk with, but walking. the cobblestones rippling through my heels, my hands cooled by modest waters of the turtle fountain at the entrance of the old Jewish ghetto. I don't remember climbing, only standing eye level with billowing cupolas and angels stepping off buildings. From the Italian stone, my numbed blood flowed naturally. I heard my name calling from the balcony, Giovanna, our old housebound language, free in the rowdy streets. Songs we hummed sotto voce, singing at the tops of their voices. I rested, leaning on the smoky marble's mineral veins. Everywhere there were steps, steps leading to cathedrals, museums, ornate palazzos, carefully chiseled waves narrowing away from the crowd, rising toward doors opening in. Doors I kept opening to dance with Etruscan women and talk with Vittoria Colonna to find Queen Giovanna of Naples. Impossible stone flowed everywhere that summer. Familiar figures I had never seen before gestured to me from the rooftops, and because I could accept the gesture, the blunt sounds softened. My tongue, my bones grew more porous, and the child I had locked away flowed out of the hardness into my voice and gave me my name. Thank you. And wait till you hear James's wonderful rendition of that.
That is such a wonderful presentation and reading and a very affecting poem, Namesake. And I do think that I should take this opportunity right now to introduce James and Juliet, who will be back later, but I think they should be introduced now as well. And so Toronto composer James Rolfe has been commissioned and performed by soloists, ensembles, orchestras, choirs, theatres, and opera companies in Canada, the USA, Europe, Asia, Australia, and New Zealand. Among his awards are a Guggenheim Fellowship, the K.M. Hunter Music Award, the Johanna Metcalf Performing Arts Prize, and the Jules Leger Prize for New Chamber Music. His operas have been performed in Toronto, Halifax, Vancouver, Banff, Edmonton, and New York. His most recent opera, The Overcoat, was premiered by Tapestry Opera with Canadian Stage and Vancouver Opera and was nominated for 10 Dora Awards. 2 solo CDs, Raw 2011 and Breathe 2018 Juno Award nomination, are available on Center Discs. Let me also introduce Juliette Palmer. And her music has come to life under a highway off-ramp, in a swimming pool, in the plastic flotsam of a remote beach, and in concert halls across North America, Europe, and Oceania. Originally from Aotearoa, I know I probably mispronounced it completely. Aotearoa, New Zealand. Juliet makes her home in Toronto, where she is artistic director of Urban Vessel, a platform for interdisciplinary collaboration. Recent works include choreography of trauma for the Element Choir, Continuum Ensemble and Video, celebrates the thousands of small gestures that save a life, while Oil and Water for the Detroit Symphony Orchestra chronicles the ecological and the political watershed. Her a cappella opera Sweat is a window into the lives of the unseen millions who work to clothe us. Cal Arts Los Angeles, Bicycle Opera Canada, National Sawdust also New York. Juliet holds a PhD in composition from Princeton University and a Master of Music in Performance, Composition, and Time-Based Art from Auckland University. Without any further ado, Juliette Palmer, James Rolfe with Giovanna Riccio's Namesake.
Thanks so much, George. And yes, I would be remiss if I didn't say that I'm very grateful to you for making this all happen through your generosity of spirit, as others have noted. These are songs and wonderful collaborations that would never have come to exist without your fathering them, in a sense. So my gratitude, and especially at a time when it's pretty difficult for all of us, especially and particularly for composers who depend on performers usually to get their stuff done. So it's wonderful. I would probably never have taken matters into my own hands, but here I am about to sing Namesake with words you've just heard by Giovanna and Juliette Palmer on the piano. I can still see the oak floor, the teacher unrolling my R's, clipping my name. Joan, Joan. I don't know if that blunt one syllable turned my head, but everywhere English flattened Italian. And when my father snipped my impractical long hair, I looked away, pretended those orphaned ringlets belonged to someone else. Blonde, blue-eyed goddesses who never ate garlic filled the temples of the Golden Book Encyclopedia. The face of ancient Rome belonged to our teacher now. But blinded statues and pictures, old sun threaded in the cracks of fallen ruins, were calling me. Later, my fingers clutched the boarding pass. I remember the airplane lifting me to a warm, unknowing sleep. Sudden morning opening onto old stone. July heat rusting on palm trees. Wind cupped in the umbrella pines. And everywhere taxis. I rode back into my dusty body, into Rome's dusky fall, echoing in the stone. From the Italian stone, my numbed blood flowed naturally. I heard my name calling from the balcony, Giovanna. Our old housebound language free in the rowdy streets. Songs we hummed sotto voce, singing at the top of their voices. I rested, leaning on the smoky marble's mineral veins. Impossible stone flowed everywhere that summer. Familiar figures I had never seen before gestured to me from the rooftops. And because I could accept the gesture, the blunt sound softened my tongue, my bones grew more porous. And the child I had locked away flowed out of the hardness into my voice and gave me my name, and gave me my name.
Yay, yay, James.
Thanks.
Before we move on for our next performance, I do want to ask you, James, to respond quickly to your method and your inspiration for choosing and working with this song. And I also want to ask Giovanna to respond to her sense of having her words transformed into song.
Yeah, it's a unique thing when it's kind of like a blind date. You know, I had met actually Giovanna before briefly, but to work on this in secret because it was a Christmas present, I didn't really collaborate. I just went ahead and set the words, and it was an easy choice because the poem really spoke to me, which is curious because I'm not an Italian girl. But nonetheless, I think the sense of great intensity of emotion was something that is universal. And there's a real musicality, both about the rhythm and, I don't know, the melody of the words. Again, makes my job so much easier when that's built into the poem. So to me, the lyricality was the deciding vote, and it was a great pleasure to set. It's true, I didn't use the entire poem. The song is already on the long side, and that was, I hope that Giovanna is not feeling bereft at the words left on the cutting room floor. But I guess she'll tell me now.
Oh, gee. Oh, thank you so much, James. Mute, George. So all I can say, my first reaction to hearing that song, my poem, as James translated it into music, was that I was just completely stunned. I just, first of all, I hadn't expected it. It was a complete surprise. But then the beauty of the music and coupled with my words, just was a completely different experience. It was like re-experiencing the poem all over again. It had been quite a few years since I had written that poem, and it really did come from my own raw experience. And therefore, to have it translated into a kind of operatic presentation was especially meaningful to me because I grew up with opera. My father was a great lover of opera and used to sing it all over the place, embarrassing us, outside our home while he's working in the yard and all that kind of thing. And so to have it, my own work presented to me in that way just felt right. That's all I can say. It felt right, and it's such a great honor, so unexpected, a piece of remarkable beauty. And every time there's a collaboration with another artist with my work, or I imagine any poet, where it's rendered in another medium or two media come together, to me, it's a completely new experience. And the work gets transformed into something more. That's all I can say. It's a remarkable thing. And the work becomes more than it was just as the poem. And it offers something bigger and more beautiful. Thanks.
I want to thank you both, or all of you, Giovanna and Juliet and James, for this rendition. And I have to ask my co-host, Yang Wang, if there's some insight that you would like to offer to what we just heard.
Oh yeah, I just love James and Juliet duo. I can feel like that innocent, complacent, relaxing trait in James' voice. And I want to thank Giovanna for bringing me into a mood. I start to miss my parents. I echo you there. I grew up without them, like in a new country in my time without them, but they are always there. They're the background of my life, and they stay there in my memory forever. Thank you for that mood. Thank you.
This is has already been a completely fantastic evening as far as I'm concerned, and I'm so touched by the emotion that the poems and the voices and the music have aroused in me, and I'm sure in everyone who's listening and watching right now. So it gives me a great honor and pleasure to continue to unfurl this incredible evening of poetry and song by introducing us all to Lisa Richter. And Lisa is the author of 2 books of poetry, Closer to Where We Began, which is from Tightrope Books 2017, and Nautilus and Bone, which is from Frontenac House 2020, and which is also the winner of the National Jewish Book Award for Poetry, and that is a major accomplishment, and also longlisted for the Raymond Souster Award. Her poetry and nonfiction have appeared in numerous journals and anthologies, including the New Quarterly, CV2, the Malahat Review, Exile Quarterly, and how wonderful it is to be in exile. I just got to send that shout out to Barry and Michael Callahan. The Literary Review of Canada, and Locations of Grief and Emotional Geography, published by Wolfsack and Wynne in 2020. She lives, writes, and teaches English as a second language, making it better, by the way, right here in Toronto. And her poem that we will hear in a little while is titled Jewess. And the composer who has put music to that poem is none other than Emily Hiemstra. And I will introduce her right now, and she will perform after we hear from Lisa with her reading. So Emily is a real-life viola mom. She is a violist, composer, and mom of 2 amazing boys under 3. She has performed at festivals around the world, including Banff Center for the Arts and the North American Viola Institute. Her music has been performed throughout the USA and Canada. Her orchestral and operatic background as a performer has deepened her understanding of color and texture, which she readily applies in her compositions to create clear and innovative works. You can find her playing concerts around Toronto, Ontario, or writing music during her children's nap times. And now, here is Lisa Richter.
Good evening, everybody. And first of all, thank you so much to George and to Yang and everybody for including me in this incredible night. I feel so privileged and so honored to be sharing the virtual stage in such a multicultural and cross-disciplinary showcase. I'd also like to give a special shout out to my mom who's here tonight. Happy post-Mother's Day. We have a new tradition that started about 5 years ago of going to the opera together around Mother's Day, which is also around the time of my birthday. And even though we haven't been able to continue that tradition in person, it gives me so much joy to be able to do that virtually and in this incredible capacity. About a year ago, Emily reached out to me to possibly collaborate on a short operetta together, and I was absolutely delighted. So just having the opportunity tonight to be able to hear my words put to her music is an extreme pleasure and privilege that I can't wait for. The book I'm going to be reading from tonight, as George mentioned, is Nautilus and Bone, published by Frontenac House in 2020. It revolves around the life and work of Anna Margolin, who was a Yiddish language poet born in Russia in 1887, who then emigrated to the United States in the early 1900s, who was known for being a radical and a revolutionary, passionate, gender norm-defying rebel rouser, for lack of a better word. And she and her life and her poetry inspired this collection. I'm going to read a few poems, ending with the one that has been put to music. The first piece that I'm going to read is called Mother of Exiles, Ellis Island, 5 December 1906. From the deck railing, she swims into focus. Feature by feature, oh, Madame Liberté, it is I, not you, the brazen giant of Miss Lazarus. How long have you been waiting? Whose books do you clutch to your apple green breast? Gold frayed and morning's unguarded alchemy? With the torch incendiary in your other fist, your hands are occupied. Dark lady, I am tired, not poor, though I've nothing to show but gestures toward bankrupt agony, water marbled topography threatening to plague me until my death. How can I give you what I am too weak even to name? Mute goddess, does your arm throb from your ideals held aloft, from the gulf between what's lived and what's spoken? You cannot reach me, and I cannot laurel your face in my hands, much as I yearn to. Not after a fortnight aboard the SS Finland, my insides tipped in a glass bottle, pummeled by tantruming storm, all rupture and enjambment, now coming to dock. Will you lift your golden lamp to guide the 1,000 peacock eyes festooning my taffeta train? Or will you keep your light turned inward, as I fear you've learned? Disrobe, pale matriarch, abandon your tired post. Let us rescue each other from crone-like branches. A new world ebb and swarm. Anna Margolin lived in many places, one of which was the Lower East Side of New York, which was the home to hundreds of thousands of Jewish immigrants in the early 1900s and was one of the most crowded places on earth at the time. This poem is set partially there and partially in Brooklyn and partially in a fantasy world that I imagine her occupying. It's entitled Flâneuse, which is the French feminine form of flâneur, a person who leisurely walks around cities, contemplating and taking in their environment. Flâneuse. East Broadway, 1907. Hush, do you hear the frogs' tenor chorus? A pantomime squeezes a tiny accordion. 3 crooning drunks share a single pair of pants. Little girl selling paper flowers for ladies' hats. You have your face on wrong. Quick, no one's looking. Take it off and put it on again. A newsboy fishes for his childhood off the Williamsburg Bridge. It comes up with a half-drowned swan, a soggy pair of bloomers, a human thumb with a red lacquered nail. My wet hair comes undone, wraps tentacles around men. It hauls to me at my bidding. Each one weeps when I set him free. Can you blame me for breaking curfew? I come home to Aunt Lena's house on Rodney Street after twirling all night in a storm of lightning and wine, brush the twigs and crush diamonds from my rosy feet. What's this behind my ear? An ancient book of spells for the intoxication of prospective suitors? 2 tender, egg-sized bumps swell beneath my scalp, equal distance from my part's white furrow. In the dark, I feel their soft protrusions, 2 velvet fuzzed antlers, slowly beginning to sprout. Anna Margolin's birth name was Rosa Lebensbaum. Anna Margolin was actually a pseudonym, which she adopted after trying on a few other pseudonyms while she was writing for Yiddish daily papers and other journals during the First World War. And eventually, after trying on a few different names, Rosa landed on Anna Margolin. So this poem is about names, much like one of the other poems we've heard tonight. It's entitled Rosa to Anna. I did not hate my name, only felt myself imprisoned in roses. In the violence of thorns, oh Rosa, thou art sicker than Blake's invisible worm. No howling to storm to fly in the night, only a howling in the heart's cold grotto, a crawling of the wormed apple, the sugar plum overture to a funeral march. Oh, how I choked on my mother's perfume, her fear's awful musk, too dense for even the heaviest of florals to mask. Anna, sweet palindrome, the Latin form of the Hebrew Hannah. Anna, a name to bathe in, a name that does not give me whiplash each time I hear it. Anna, elemental in its frequency. Anna, everywhere in this Babel labyrinth of cities, shimmering with derelict oil and muffled lust. Anna warms your hands in hers by an iron hearth. Anna rocks you to milk-drunk sleep. Anna, the flavor of kosher salt, liverwurst, pickles, beer, chicken schmaltz. Anna, the wind snap of calico shirtwaists and aprons on clotheslines from fire escapes and tenement windows, shameless and fluttering. Anna, the dirt packed between the nails of the huntress. Anna, ochre roots tendrilled deep into Bronx asphalt. Anna, with each reach and twist, tunneling deeper. Anna, into the belly of this new world my words are wilding. The last poem I'm going to read is actually the first poem in the collection. It's in 3 parts. I'm going to read the first 2 for the sake of time. It's entitled Jewess. It speaks to the ways in which Jewish women and women of color were objectified, fetishized, and in many ways otherized in the Western European artistic tradition, and continue to be so in many ways today. The poem, as I said, is called Jewess. 1. Don't call me Jewess. Call me hellfire and fishhooks. The moon as it violets the earth in mollusk silver shadow, papered with yellowed envelopes and wheat. Call me pale skin stretched into backlit sails. Call me opium milk rose, a comet saliva trail spittling the blue globe. Call me abacus. Call me the bespoke noose you wind in loops around your fingers. The tangerine light that shimmies through curtains as evening sidles in steady advance towards you. the burnished apples, high scarlet gloss, a windpipe's hollow moan. Call me newsreel, hollyhock, sundial, astrolabe, the peacock's shimmering cyanide blues and gangrene greens, the rusted latch from the outhouse door that claws open and warms to your calloused clasp, an iodine sunset swelling across a wound. 2, Jewess, the feminine ESS, doubled, the S doubled. 2 snakes brandished like iron daggers in each hand of the Minoan goddess. Add a final E to make Jewess, if you like, for an extra Chaucerian besmearing. Insolent as Lilith, seditious as Eve, murky, dark, hairy, hook-nosed, her bolder breasts leaking venom and ink. She throws the evil eye, turning men into writhing eels. Between her legs, the mouth of the bear's cave, musky as wintered sleep, matted, slick, and deadly as the excretions of insects lurking for their prey. Beneath her crude leather shoes, worn from treading the stone paths around peasants' cottages and hexing them, devil's horn bunions extrude from the sides of her feet. She crows for blood, aches for tissue and tendon. She, not the Jew himself, is the true threat, the real enemy. Dream thief, genius of treason, corrupter of Gentile children. The forger, the smuggler, pain bringer, wart giver, crop assassin, beguiler of horses. She-wolf, bulbous, vicious destroyer of villages, greedy temptress of husbands. Beware her crooked teeth, her spindly legs, her manly arms, her mustachioed upper lip, sharp whiskers poking like stubs of dry grass. She will do everything you have feared you wanted, everything you have wanted to fear. Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful, and extremely incredibly imagistic and impressive material. And so now it is time to ask Emily Hiemstra to give us her rendition of Jewess.
Thank you, George. I think Yang was going to help me out. I am a violist and composer by day and rather a closet singer, so I decided to record myself ahead of time. So I think Yang has the video if that's possible to play.
So I will share the screen. Okay. Share the screen. So
Anna is going to play.
Oh, Anna, thank you. I'm so sorry, Anna. Thank you.
Wait
no problem.
Yeah, one moment. Can you hear?
Yeah.
Don't call me Jewess, call me Hilfer and fish hooks. The moon as it violets the earth in mollusk silver shadow, papered with yellowed envelopes and weight. Call me, pale skin stretched into backlit sails. Call me, oh, be a milk rose, a comet's alive. that shimmies through curtains as evening sidles in steady advance towards you. The burnished apples are scarlet glass, a wind bites hollow moon. Shimmering cyanide blues and gangrene greens. The rusted latch from the outhouse door that claws open and warms to your calloused clasp. Call me an iodine sunset swelling across a wound.
Very, very nice. That is such a great performance of this extremely touching and important poem. And so I'm going to ask you, Emily, and of course also Lisa, to comment briefly on your reactions to each other's adoption of the work.
Thank you. Well, first I have to say thank you, like everyone else, George, for organizing this. I think, as some others have mentioned, it has been really hard during COVID to not have reasons to write. And so it has just been such a beautiful experience. So thank you. Thank you for giving that gift as well. And I also have to say thank you to my dear friend and colleague, Adam, who played piano for me. I am a terrible pianist. So I have to thank him for his help on this as well. It has been a really wonderful journey to work with a living poet. I've said a lot by dead poets, which has been great, but it's been such a wonderful experience to live with Lisa's poetry, and we had the chance to chat a little bit as well, and just to make sure that I was gleaning from the text what Lisa had put there. And as Lisa mentioned, we've kind of been working on some proposals to write an operetta about the life of Anna Margolin, who is such a wonderful, dynamic character. And so having that insight and that background was just really exciting. And I wanted to be true to her and her character. And I love how defensive she is. And then she shows you her heart, and it's kind of this back and forth. She's such a wonderfully complex character. And I wanted to portray that in the music as well. So it was a really wonderful, wonderful collaboration to be a part of.
Yeah, I just want to echo that. It was an incredible collaboration, and what an inspiring process. And Emily, you totally nailed it. You did Anna Margolin's memory, I think, so proud, and really captured her spirit. And I don't know how you did this, but you also managed to give the song and the music and the poem kind of an almost old world Jewish minor key sort of cadence. So it would have been completely, I think, at home in the world of Anna Margolin herself. You just managed to capture the zeitgeist and the beauty and the complexity and the difficulty and the roughness and the beauty of Anna Margolin's world in a way that I never could have imagined. As you can see, I'm very emotional. It's just such an honor for me as someone who's loved music and grew up with it, having had parents who were great music lovers who passed that down to me. So, and just being part of this experience, I'm sorry for gushing so much, and for such a wonderful audience and so many people who are here listening and giving your time and attention. I just want to say thanks.
Once again, just tremendous creativity. And I wrote this personally, Lisa, to you, and of course to Emily, that for me, I hear this kind of like combination of cabaret and Bertolt Brecht and so on. And so I think that dovetails with your own commentary, Lisa, on the work. So thank you both so very, very much. Let me ask my co-host once again, Yang Wang, to weigh in with whatever comments she may like to offer.
Thank you, George. I think Lisa is not only a poet, she's a historian. And what a like a deeper and more powerful way to tell a history in poetry language. And Emily's expression gives a little bit more mild, I would say even romantic taste to Lisa's poem. So altogether, very beautiful. Thank you.
Again, just tremendous, and I know that our time is going, but that's all right because we love everything that we are hearing and understanding and comprehending and celebrating this evening. But we are now going to move to our fourth presentation. And this will actually be Aisha Chatterjee will be presenting the poetry of Andrea Thompson. And I will tell you a little bit about Andrea, is unfortunately unable to be with us this evening due to a health setback. And of course, we wish her prayers deeply and intensely and profoundly for her quick recovery. But I'm going to tell you about her, of course, right now. She is a poet, novelist, editor, and educator. In 2005, her spoken word album, One, that's O-N-E, One, was nominated for a Canadian Urban Music Award. And in 2019, her album, Soul Orations, earned her a League of Canadian Poets Sherry D. Wilson Golden Beret Award for Excellence. She's co-author of Other Tongues, Mixed Race Women Speak Out, author of the novel Over Our Heads, and another drum roll here, the 2021 recipient of the Leon E. and Anne M. Pavlik Poetry Prize. Her poetry collection, A Selected History of Soul Speak, and that's Soul, S-O-U-L, is due to be published by Frontenac House in autumn 2021. And again, Aisha Chatterjee will be voicing the poetry of Andrea Thompson for us. And that will conclude with a reading of the poem Wound to Light, which has been composed and put music to by, again, James Rolfe, who will be accompanied in the performance of that poem / song by Juliette Palmer. And here's Aisha.
Thanks, George. I'm really sorry that Andrea can't be performing these pieces herself. She's a powerhouse as a performer, and she just has this real charisma on stage, which I know would have come through even if you were squinting at her in a, on a 6-inch screen. I was kind of, so I'll try and do justice to her work, which is really powerful. I was wondering really why she asked me to do her, to perform her work and not George, because quite frankly, he would have been the perfect person to be reading her work. And I'm not just saying it because I'm trying to be modest or anything, but you'll understand what I mean when I read her poetry. But then she sent me the poems and she sent me the notes for her poems, and it was instantly clear, as you're about to find out. So without any further ado, here is Andrea Thompson's poems. So This first poem was written in tribute to the man who made this evening possible, George Elliott Clarke. It's a small celebration of the enormous contribution he's made, not only to Canadian literature in the larger sense, but on a more personal level, in support of so many individual poets in the community. It's a tribute to his boundless enthusiasm, huge heart, and passionate support of the work of so many of us. The title of this poem, and many of the phrases used throughout, are references to the Elton John poem album, Captain Fantastic and the Brown Dirt Cowboy. A few years ago, Andrea discovered that both she and George were fans of this album, which was hugely influential to them both as young poets who were, as Elton John would say, still green and growing. So this is Captain Fantastic for George Elliott Clarke. And she prefaces it with a quote by George. "The blasphemy of our Negro pagan crying against Eurolit's deathly white pages be a rude caricature of eloquence. Don't nobody say Negro no more but you, prolific poet laureate, our every man of letters, you, our city slick diction captain, our brown word cowboy, every young Black poet's mentor, our Trojan horse revered for your eloquent verse. You schooled us through the revolution, reinvention of Acad-English into Afro-Cadian, became the antidote to those postmodern colonial disembodied ivory tower power poetics. You confounded the stereotype with type, shouted down Poundians with a fusion of briny Chaucer and Yeatsian jazz, seasoned with a mid-70s adolescent classic rock aficionado appreciation of the instigated structure of Elton John and Topin. Bard of bombastic recitation, resuscitating the canon, you drawled, charming, chewing the fat, sucking the marrow off down-home Nova Scotian lingo. You let us into the kitchen, mere children, we looked up from under tables, round corners, eavesdropping, sopping up vernacular, as linguistic nectar dripped from the mouth of Beatrice and her kin. Chancy, your blunt talk, suave style, acerbic independence, raunchy, macho, feisty lyricism, singing heroic and scarf and beret chivalry, liberating the literary academy with a juicy, direct, dialectic dialect. Cooked up, delicious, simmered in soul food poems, stewed in the juices of stories of home, infused with a who's who of English lit influences. A snapshot of a real Black, all-Canadian Negro literary quarterback, our brother, our champion, our hero, that dude with the loudest laugh in town, or just someone his mother might know. The dates, she didn't give me notes for this next one, but I know that we have members in the audience who are not Canadian and have joined us at least from California, hi, and India. My dad is in the audience and he woke up at 4:30 in the morning in Kolkata to join us. And so for all of you who are not really aware of Canadian politics and history and what's been happening here, April 20th, 2020 was the date of Canada's worst mass shooting in Nova Scotia, where a gunman shot, I think it was 22 people in 16 different locations, and set fire to homes while he was doing this. Air hug, April 20th, 2020. Kindness. It's all we have now. As we travel this Jeremy Bearimy Kubler-Ross path, this crackerjack box terrain, as we play whack-a-mole with untenable emotional states. We have denied standing 6 feet apart in endless snaking store lines to buy beer and gummy bears and cookie dough and chocolate and pesto and pasta and vodka and wine and anything that will turn it all into some sort of palatable blur. We have bunkered in and hunkered down on Netflix binges and buttered popcorn, begging our flickering boxes to make us laugh, to make us forget for a while. We have raised our voices, have raised our arms to the sky, shaking fists and cursing our politicians, our governments, our fate, cursing each other for opinions we declare to be at best ridiculous and at worst a social danger. We have wished we could muzzle one another. We have goggled and clicked and taken the bait. We have raged and raged and raged and raged. We have gone to bed midday, pulling the covers up over our heads or turning our faces away from each other, staring off into space, as if begging a window, a door, or even a blank wall to envelop us and take us away. We have said okay to it all, have said okay to just one more day, till we're back to normal, just one more week, maybe a month tops. We have surrendered civil liberties like they were tissue from an endless box, have closed our eyes and waved the white flag in order to keep ourselves sane. We have begun silver lining campaigns, have instigated community groups to support the homeless, have started caremongering initiatives. We've painted pictures, composed music, written poems, chanting, "This is the new normal." And then some madman with a gun sets his demons loose and we begin that Kubler-Ross dance all over again. The numbers slowly climb through the hours, through the days that follow. 13, then 15, then 16 to now 19 and more beautiful humans from a sleepy seaside town cut down for no good reason at all. I don't know about you, but this is where I get off the bus. This is where I start crying in the pet food aisle, unashamed, knowing that the faces behind all the apocalyptic masks hold back tears of their own. We keep on keeping on, but really, it is all too much, too much. Too much has been lost to do anything else today but cry and pray and mourn. Kindness, it's all we have now. Nova Scotia, I write this poem to offer my condolences. This is my virtual bouquet. These words are my air hug. You are in my heart today. I send you my love. So I'm really looking forward to hearing, to reading this next poem, which is Wound Turned to Light. And this is the poem that James has set to music. And this is what Andrea wanted me to say about it. This poem is the result of a writing prompt based on the quote, "Art is a wound turned to light" by 20th century French artist Georges Braque. Wound turned to light. The light of witnessing existence makes everything beautiful again, brings rebirth to those disowned parts of self, those shattered fragments the world has deemed unworthy. Those darkened days and tired nights of soul-deep weariness become refreshed through the act of simply recording what is. what it is to be ourselves, unabashed and naked, living on this crushed ball of stardust. What it is to be us, hurtling through the universe, bouncing up against each other like ideological pinballs, at a time when the polarity of this planet has sent us all off on our own diametrical trajectory, away from the core, when the weight of interpersonal animosity has become crippling, when the term respectfully disagree is about to become extinct. In this moment, I bow down and thank God for bestowing us with the gift of creativity, for endowing all of us humans a life-giving method of release to the pressures of simply existing, a way to translate power into beauty, a way to open up the valve on it all and to begin to let off steam. What a gift it is to be given this moment, to be invited to express all the colors of this jagged emotional palette without judgment, to simply say yes. Yes to the raw red of rage, yes to the yellow of hope, yes to the bruised-hearted blues, yes to unfathomable purple, yes. Yes, 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 and amen to it all.
Wow, that is fantastic once again, and I think that Aisha, you've definitely brought the right kinds of positivity and persuasiveness to Andrea's words, and I really love that chorus of yes, yes, yes. Which does remind me of Molly Bloom in Ulysses, James Joyce and all that. But I think tonight's also been about saying yes through your poetry and Lisa's and Giovanna's and Andrea's and Anna's and Anna Yin's as well, which we're still to hear very briefly. But now, let us turn our attention once again to the wonderful composer and singer, James Rolfe, and of course his brilliant composer companion, Juliette Palmer. Here they are once again, this time giving us their rendition of Wound Turned to Light.
Thanks, George. We'll just go for it. The light of witnessing existence makes everything beautiful again, brings rebirth to those disowned parts of self, those shattered fragments the world has deemed unworthy. Those darkened days and tired nights of soul-deep weariness become refreshed through the act of simply recording what it is to be ourselves, unabashed and naked, living on this crushed ball of stardust. What it is to be us, hurtling through the universe, bouncing up against each other like ideological pinballs at a time when the polarity of this planet has sent us all off on our own diametrical trajectory away from the core, when the weight of interpersonal animosity has become staggeringly crippling, when the term respectfully disagree is about to become extinct. In this moment, I bow down and thank God for bestowing us with the gift of creativity, for endowing all of us humans a life-giving method of release to the pressures of simply existing, a way to translate pain into beauty, a way to open up the valve on it all and begin to let off steam. What a gift it is to be given this moment, to be invited to express all the colors of this jagged emotional palette without judgment. To simply say yes to the raw red of rage, yes to the yellow of hope, yes to the bruised-hearted blues, yes to the unfathomable purple, yes, 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 and amen to it all.
Well, yes. Oh my golly. Thank you. And I'm so happy to hear this chorus of yes in the way that you've composed it, James. So I'm going to ask you once again briefly to respond to the process of putting music to this very fine work by Andrea Thompson. And I want to thank Aisha Chatterjee once again for the wonderful reading of it. I also want to ask, after you give your comments, James, and maybe Juliet as well about the playing, but I also want to ask Yang Wang to weigh in once again with her understandings and appreciations of this piece.
So, yeah, the first thing that hit me about this poem, it has to go here. It went here for me. It covers huge territory. It really about our existence in the world and how, what a gift creativity is, a God-given gift. And it's something we all have access to. And these are words I believe in. So that made my job, once again, it made my job easy. That and the fact that the words are fantastic. The rhythm, the cadence, the melody, the drive, the tempo, these are all things that music thrives on and comes alive. So it really was a pleasure to write this song. And you know, every time I sing it and every time I relate to the words, there is more. And they're just very generous words. They just cover a lot of deep ground. So I'm really grateful. And so thanks so much, Andrea, for these words, and thanks, George, for setting me up with this poem.
Juliet or Yang Wang?
I'll jump in quickly because it's sort of sitting here playing away, and it's just been a really amazing opportunity for us to make music together in a way that's different from how we normally would. So this pandemic year, we don't have access to the performers that we would normally collaborate with. So we've collaborated with each other, and we've been singing Dowland lute songs at the piano kind of for the last year. And so this last flurry of songwriting, George, that you invited James into has just been really delightful. And I've loved getting back into playing the piano again, more actually, paying attention to what notes I'm playing. And if there are too many and they go too fast, I can just get James to make it easier. So it's very nice, very handy.
Yes.
Anyway, and it's lovely just hearing James sort of blossom into the singing thing. It's I mean, he does sing anyway, but just to sing his own songs, it's not something that you would normally do.
I know, and it's so much fun. It's tons of fun.
I'm overjoyed to hear your comments. Let me just ask Yang once again if you'd like to say anything before we hear our last poet and performer.
I think Andrea would love James, Juliet, and Aisha to express her poems this way. So beautiful. I think her poems are just very musical, that sound, the vowels, the syllables. When Aisha read it, I wanted to read it out myself, because just to treat my mouth and tongue, it's just so good for reading. And Aisha did a wonderful job. Thank you. And Andrea, again, I will be thinking of you and wish you be well soon, like everybody.
Wow, what a tremendous evening we've had, and I join Yang as well with wishing Andrea a very quick and full recovery. And I want to thank Aisha again for the wonderful rendition of the words of the poems. And I'm regretting that we are at the end of our program, because I'd like to be able to continue. But we also have the delight of hearing from Anna Yin, who I've been privileged to know for, I think it must be at least maybe close to 10 years now, maybe not so long, but has been an absolutely incredible addition to the English poetry scene across the country. But I want to say a few words about her, and then the composer who has provided music for her poetry. So Anna Yin is an IT professional, and Anna has actually been instrumental, pun intended, tonight for helping us, along with David Yeager and Yang as well, for making sure, and James and Juliet, for making sure that our technical stuff is up to snuff. So once again, she is an IT professional, immigrated to Canada in 1999, has authored 5 poetry collections and won the 2005 Ted Plantos Memorial Award, 2 Martys, 2 scholarships from the USA, and 3 grants from the Ontario Arts Council. Anna was appointed to be Mississauga's inaugural poet laureate in 2015. And I think Mississauga already has such a poetic name, but with Anna contributing as poet laureate, she actually added, let's say, more lyricism to Mississauga. Her poems and translations have appeared in the Queen's Quarterly, Arc Poetry, the New York Times, China Daily, CBC Radio, World Journal. She's performed on Parliament Hill, at the Austin International Poetry Festival, the Edmonton Poetry Festival, and at universities in China, the USA, and Bangladesh. Her 6th book, Mirrors and Windows, from Guernica Editions, will be out this year in 2021, and she teaches Poetry Alive. The composer with whom Anna has worked is none other than Gao Wan, who has been very brief in his bio. He only wants us to know that he is a music lover, has immigrated from China to Canada to continue his business, which retails, I should give a drum roll for this, pianos, and he provides piano instruction. He sings very well, and he loves to help others, which I think is a wonderful bio, which I'm going to apply to everybody here, whether we can sing well or not. I think that everybody who's taking part this evening at least loves singing. If we can't sing ourselves, we love singing, and I want to say that we all love to help others. So I thank Gao Wan for his contribution. And so Anna is going to perform now, and she will be reciting her poetry with the accompaniment of Gao Wan pre-recorded, I believe. Anna.
Okay, thank you, George. Thank you very much for the wonderful introduction. I also want to add, I also have another composer as guitar teacher. Later, I will introduce Mark Harry. So I hope he is in here also watching, but he also has some health issue. So I really hope he recover very well. And so later, I will play also 3 poems with music from him. So thank Gao Yuan and thank Mark Harry. So first I will play is a short video, and the short video I made it 2 years ago, and also the music is provided by Gao Yuan. So I will play the music and I will share the screen. So and you let me share the screen. So you can see the screen now, right? Okay, so I will play. Honeysuckles and ladders. Poem for all sisters. Honeysuckles are also called sister flowers. Music by Gao Yuan, poem by Anna Ying. Last winter, haplessly, I longed for snow angels we made many years ago. Sister, how are you? Is the other world peaceful and pain-free? This year, spring came late. On the long trail, I walk alone, up and down, thinking of those being exiled, the shattered homes and lost families. The honeysuckles, some yellow, some white, just bloom, enchained and enchanting, fragrance lingering in the air, chasing their climb vines. I see faded faces and warm walls. I remember the other day reading Ladders by Rachel Garcia and imagine all ladders collected and connect to create one, to reach heaven. Yet on the ground, accidentally, I stepped on some tiny blue flowers with the name Forget-Me-Not, too painful to call out. So now I will share another poems. These poems by Mark Harry. He's a guitar teacher. He also play flamenco and play solo. And before COVID, we performed several cities in Markham, in Ontario, in Hamilton. So and now I will play his music and with the poem. Okay, quickly, let me find the music. Okay, Nightingale. A Chinese nightingale high, a cloud floating. Beneath its shadow, poplar trees stand tall in rows, leaves already fallen, thin branches frame tiny threads. Inside, cold like an abandoned well, deep, moldy, winds blow in and dangle empty wells. By the window, the bird thinks his only sound, his voice jammed as rustling leaves. I approach, palms baited with golden grains. Come, take some. I could. He turns. I catch my own shadow, too heavy to lift. So the next one is a new poem, also music by Mark Harry, and this poem is for Li Po, a great ancient Chinese poet. And I always have a special feeling to poets, so this poem is a love poem for Li Po. Valentine night for Li Po. I want to be one of your lovers. I want to be the shadow of your dance. I'm the fire, the ice, the cup for your tea. I swear I blossom. I weep, hot, cold, and sad. I live in each of your poems. Look, the same moon I miss and long for, a rising bright moon. Take me, carry me into your river mirror. Take me, carry me. I have tasted countless teardrops. Now, thousands of years later, they flood to claim this mad flame. So the next one is my accent, and George always said accent is beautiful, and so the story behind it is my accent, and I'm glad it chose for National Poetry Month the poem In Your Pocket Day project, and in 2017. So, and let me open the music also by Mark Harry. My accent. It is charming, I assure you, I assure myself, and choose to believe so. Languages have colors, I want to show you my tender blue. But you cut off with fork and knife, quicker than my chopstick taps. My accent grows trees, trails, and winding roads to the West Coast landscape. It points to the open sky, yet clouds are too heavy and form raindrops. My papers collect them, then dry in silence. I have hesitated many times before thank you. And I want to mention this because last year, I have the honor to invite the 4 poet laureate, Molly Peacock, Al Morris, and George and Alice Major to join me for Poetry in Translation events co-hosted by East-West Learning Club. And also that has a beautiful and very profounding, a different style, different voice discussions for 5 video. So, and please feel free to check them. And it's wonderful. So I really hope it's like a bridge to build the East and West cultural like understanding and appreciation. So culture appreciation. So, and I want quickly to finish with my reading with a very short poem, but I also want to thank Guernica Editions and to publish this book and Mirrors and Windows. So, and as my previous slide, so, and all the poets, the work, and for the poetry in translation we discussed is from this book. And this book has 56 poets work with my translation. So the work is over 10 years period. And so, and they has a poem from English to Chinese and from Chinese to English. So I'm doing 2 ways translation. So, and so, because I believe each poem, each poet is like a mirror and window. So we can see each other. We also connect with each other. So that's why now I wrote a short poem to introduce the book. So mirrors and windows. Mirrors and windows. On this mirror, I draw our heart in subtle red, ripe with paradise fruit. Our dream rises with its light. Follow me and enter the deep dazzling dark. In each bloom we find the eye sees through windows. So thank you all. I will stop sharing, and I'm really enjoyed this night. Thank George and thank Yang Wang and thank all the poets and the musicians for your wonderful performance. It's really profounding, and I also believe the poetry, music art are very good medicine and also are the great light to shining on us. Thank you. So now I'm return to George and Yang Wang to continue hosting. Thank you.
Wow. Okay, Anna, that was brilliant. I love the piano. I love the guitar, the words, your voice, and the sentiments about poetry being a mirror and a window, translation being a mirror and a window. And you've done so much, partially through translation as well as your own poetry, to build those bridges between ourselves and Chinese literature, and to introduce so many Canadian poets to a Chinese audience and Chinese poets to Canadian audiences. And of course, this is extremely important because poetry is so much naturally, it goes without saying, we are in a sense prisoners of our separate languages. So translation is so beautifully the way to open up those doors and let us open and turn those doors into windows and turn them into mirrors so we can see each other and have our thoughts reflected. And your poetry is such a feeling way of bringing our worlds together, and also your own personal reflection on being a poet, being Canadian, working in the industry of tomorrow, which is already here today, frustrating many of us, especially me. I'm thinking of IT here. I'm saying that with a smile because I rely on it too. And I also want to thank you so much for everything you've contributed to bringing this program together tonight, and sharing your beautiful words and the music with us. Before we move to a conclusion, I also want to ask Young to add a few words here in appreciation.
Yes, Anna has done a great deal to introduce English-speaking poets to the Chinese community, and also use her talent to promote poetry, especially among young people. So has done a lot of workshops in schools, and through her, we get to know George. So thank you so much, Anna. And I love her poems, the beautiful music. Like read her poems, like a lot of poetic images and kind of sentimental feelings there. And read until the last part. Usually it's the last part gives your heart the heaviest blow, like that little blue flowers, too painful to call out. Thank you.
Thank you.
And
thank you, George.
And George, before you conclude the evening, can I ask, like you bring us 5 wonderful female poets. So we got to hear a female voice in poetry, but how about male voice?
Well, I hope that we'll do other evenings like this if everyone's available and amenable to doing it. But I don't mind adding my male voice tonight. In addition to co-hosting, I also have had the great privilege and honor of having a poem of mine put to music by none other than James Rolfe. We decided to save it to the very end. It's only a couple of minutes, and I didn't want to interfere with anybody else's centrality this evening. But James has composed this wonderful, funky, Parliament Funkadelic, Gil Scott-Heron, and other kinds of riffs for this poem. So I will read it and share it with everyone, and then hear James and Juliet perform it. I'll tell you very quickly about the poem, and then I'll read it as well. It's from this book. Here's my advertisement for myself, Read, which came out in 2011. And it's the first poem in the book, and it's called To the Poet. So it's meant to be for all poets, from a poet to all poets. Full disclosure, transparency here, everyone. The original version of this poem is in Russian, and it's by Alexander Pushkin. As you may know, Alexander Pushkin died in a duel. In other words, he was a very passionate guy. And in my opinion, a guy of strong passions and tempers and so on. So I came across a translation by Constance Garnett. I mistakenly thought it was Babette Deutsch, but I haven't looked at the translation in a long time. But the translation is by Constance Garnett, actually, of Pushkin's original poem. And I don't like the translation. I think that Constance is too tepid, is too namby-pamby in dealing with the Russian gusto and passion and anger and rage and lust and everything else of Alexander Pushkin. So I decided I would rewrite Constance Garnett's translation in my own words. So the original, I like to say, skeleton of this poem is Alexander Pushkin. All credit goes to him. But this is my particular flesh. if I can say it, this is my Frankenstein version of putting my flesh on Alexander Pushkin's skeleton via Constance Garnett's too tepid translation. Anyway, enough of the introduction. Here it is, To the Poet, following in the footsteps of Alexander Pushkin. Poet, Damn you if you crave a public love. People clap raucously, then fickle stop. Fools don scholars' tassels, bray their critiques, while crowds' hoorays chill or scald your marrow. Best to stand Caesar calm, statue austere, its majesty, yes, to dwell defiant, castled in your own soul, free and aloof. Perfect your flowers, distill their dream liqueurs, but ignore all praise of your past confections. Judge for yourself, your vineyard's heady wine, your strict taste dictates its vintage sweetness. Do you want joy? Let the pack bay and howl. Let them snarl and spit on your altar's flames and breathe your temple's triumphant perfumes. And so here are James and Juliet.
Great, we're just gonna jump in. Poet, damn you if you crave public love. People clap raucously, then fickle stop. Fools don scholars' tassels, bray their critiques, while crowds raise, chill, or scald your marrow. Best to stand Caesar calm, a statue austere. Its majesty, yes, to dwell defiant, castled in your own soul, free and aloof. Perfect your flowers, distill their dream liquors, but ignore all praise of your past confections. Judge for yourself your vineyard's heady wine. Your strict taste dictates its vintage sweetness. Do you want joy? Let the pack bay and howl. Let them snarl and spit on your altar's flames and breathe your temple's triumphant perfumes. Your temple's triumphant perfumes.
Yeah, my golly, I love it. Thank you so much. This is a great honor, James and Juliet, to hear that poem put to music. And I want to hear more from everybody. And I hope that we can do a similar event a little bit later in the year. I hope that everyone who has been present this evening has enjoyed everything immensely as I have. It's a bit later than we thought we were going to go, but hey, it's all in the service of art and it's all been uplifting. So we are good. And I want to thank everybody once again from the bottom of my heart for all of the energy and effort and love and affection you've poured into all of the works tonight, the poetry, the singing, the piano, the guitar that we heard with Anna's pieces. And I'm at a loss for words now, finally, at 9:30. What else can I say except that we owe you the poets and the singers, the composers, the pianists, and the guitarist, just so much love and appreciation for everything that you do, even when there is no financial reward, no audience present, and yet you still create these works that bring us a sense of beauty and a sense of power and a sense of the joy of life and the necessity of struggling forward and upward no matter what. I'm going to stop trying to preach. In fact, I should move into prayer mode and say, I pray that we can do this together again in short order. And again, I want to express my humility to everyone and to thank everyone once again for this incredible evening, which is memorable and historic. And I must give the last word to Yang. But before I go, I want to say to everyone, stay healthy, stay optimistic, stay happy, stay well, and let's gather again, hopefully in public, in person, maybe in a concert hall.
Absolutely. And George, your poem sounded like, to me, like wild, passionate. I know you're always passionate. I didn't know you're that wild. Yes, and I want to say thank you all, like George, our wonderful poets and composers, musicians, for bringing us this enjoyable evening, and our audience, put in all those enthusiastic messages in our chat room. Thank you so much, and I wish, we can do it again later.
Okay. Good night, everyone.
Goodbye, everyone. So have a good night.
Keep composing, keep singing.
Bye-bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.
Love
By the
you,
way,
everybody.
yeah. Oh,
Take care.
by the way, I have recorded. So later on, I will post on YouTube. So for those people want to share it, feel free to share it later. Okay? So, okay. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye. Bye. Thank you, Anna.
Thank
Good
you.
night. Good night.